Welcome to VoddIT, the BCS video podcast for the interesting,
amusing,
and downright weird in IT.
Welcome to VoddIT, the video version of the audio VoddIT podcast, which of course is the audio version of this video podcast, although the content will be different, so I hope that's clear to everybody. Like a crocodilian Tom Cruise, we're going to be short and snappy, and our first concern is security.
That's right, and it's a very important concern because we're going to do this podcast anonymously, therefore protecting our identities. So whatever you do, don't tell them your name, Brian.
I won't, Henry. The other thing that we're very concerned about is now that we have these marvellous new video tools, we don't want to play about with them, do we, Henry?
That's right.
We want to make an absolute conscious effort to be sensible and dignified.
So there'll be no messing around with green screens,
Chroma key,
special effects,
or other things like that. In today's VoddIT podcast, we're going to discuss how big is it,
an important question.
the Paleo Future blog and how marvellous that is,
That's right.
and we're going to look at a green or perhaps a yellowy review. So, how big is it? Well, today we're looking at a USB stick. It sounds dull, but in fact it's fascinating. Isn't that right, Henry?
That's right, because this is the USB stick in question.
How big is it?
Not very big, Brian.
No. How big is it?
Oh, sorry, 1 gig, in fact. In fact, it's not just pure, plain old, boring storage, because if you're a government minister, or maybe you work for a national newspaper, if you put your data on here, it's encrypted. Therefore, it's nice and safe should you ever leave it on the train or anywhere else in public.
Yes, and if you didn't get that reference, it's to the Daily Mail, who took great delight in having a go at the government, and then, rather unfortunately, had a bit of a security issue themselves.
Whoopsie.
But what do we think? Did you actually review this, Henry? Or
I
was it
did.
just
It's very good. It's USB 2. It's very fast, and you can encrypt all the data on it just by dragging and dropping them into the folder. It's locked away with a nice little password, and you're safe. So, should it ever fall out of your pocket, out of the back of a lorry, perhaps, then you'll be safe. No worries there.
I don't know what you'd be doing with it in the back of a lorry. But just for the listeners and indeed viewers, because this is video.
That's right.
How big is it? It's that big.
It's that big.
So here's why we really love the Paleo Future blog. More than a 3G iPhone pizza. This is a still from Exit to Tomorrow, World's Fair Architecture, Design, Fashion, 1933 to 2005. It's a 1939 video phone, complete with mocked up picture. The chap making up for his male pattern boldness by directing his energies into inventing slick, pocket-sized devices is Charles F. Kettering, General Motors Vice President in charge of research. Snappily, this was called the television telephone. File under tin does what it says on there.
So that's the Paleo Future blog. Now, we've talked about the Paleo Future blog quite a bit during the audio podcast, and we're going to do it a little bit in the video podcast as well, because they're very nice people over there. But of course, that particular device leads us on to a discussion, doesn't it?
That's right.
1939, video, picture phone. Picture messaging was supposed to be a huge thing, wasn't it? It's going to be the next killer app after texting.
That's right. That's
what
right.
happened to it, Henry?
Well, it just didn't take off. I mean, 3 came out with their network, their 3G network by default. You had lots of phones with cameras on both sides so that you could film somebody or you could film yourself whilst talking, but it just didn't take off. I mean, the bandwidth's there, but you need both people with identical phones. It just didn't work.
No. In fact, it was quite annoying. Even now, when I get sent picture messages, sometimes you have to download it, don't you?
I know,
don't know
it
if
is
that's because
annoying.
you're connected to a network here via the servers, but they often don't download.
No, that's right. And even saying that the 3G bandwidth is there, the network's all up and running, has been for a number of years, it's still not the greatest thing in the world, and it's not really suitable, 3G, for streaming video conversations in that way.
So, will we ever communicate with pictures in a sensible way? Well, of course, one of the big things that's been spoken about recently, and of course it's got a new phrase, so it's nice and trendy, is telepresence.
Right.
There was going to be a huge telepresence conference, wasn't there, a couple of months ago? It got cancelled for reasons that I'm not too sure about. But is that the next big thing?
I think it probably will be. It's a great tool for business because it means that they don't have to travel. Obviously, everybody's thinking about their carbon footprint these days.
Yes.
So that means that you can set up a group of people from each company, and you can just, in the comfort of your own headquarters, and you can talk away, and you can have the same effect of a round table conference without actually leaving the building.
Which is nice, isn't it?
It is.
And also, it's very science fictional.
Yes, and very green.
Always good for us. Well, it's been manic, hasn't it? Let's take a little breather. Now, the next thing we're going to discuss is a proper review. We had a little USB stick, and now we're going to have a review of a green device, or really a sort of yellowy,
Chromy, shiny
chromy
thing.
device.
Yes.
Tell us more, Henry. What is it?
Well, this is the Freeloader. It's the actual, it's called, we're not insulting it.
Looks
and
at me
it's a little, two little photochromatic cells that charge up a battery inside so that you can take it on holiday with you. If your iPod or your phone runs out of juice, stick it in the sun, charges up, and bish bash bosh, you can recharge your device. Simple as that.
Does it work?
It does. Only if you read the manual, as I found out.
Yes.
Because the
Tell
first
us
time...
the story, Henry.
Yeah, the first time you use it, unless you've plugged it into the USB on your PC first, it won't work. It'll charge up for about 4 minutes, and then you think, oh, why isn't it working? So read the manual, charge it over USB first till it's fully charged, and then you can stick it in the sun. Although it does say you need to stick it in the sun for quite a long time, most of a day, which is a bit difficult because, you know, the little pesky sun keeps moving.
Yes.
So you put it in the sun when you leave the house in the morning and come back and it's in beautiful shade. But
Does it
will
need to
still
be in
pick up.
direct sunlight, or does it just need
It does help if it's in direct sunlight, but it will work. I mean, it's even charging in here under the lamp, so you can possibly see the little red lights. So we're recycling the energy used to light this podcast.
Yes. So that's very green, isn't it? Rather a good idea, I think.
Only £25 as well.
I
So
was just going to ask you how much it was. Thanks for that information.
no problem.
So that brings us to the end of this edition, the very first edition of VoddIT. But we're going to in future bring you lovely interesting devices to look at, the occasional ridiculous joke, and we'd like to hear from you as well. If you've got any suggestions for what we should cover or talk about, please let us know. Email editor@bcs.org or don't send a video message. Well, goodbye Henry.
Goodbye, Brian.
Goodbye both our viewers.
Goodbye, Mum.